Hello, everybody. Um, let's see. We are doing chapters 11 through 13 of The Dark Castle today. And I have with me my lovely friend Dino.
Hello.
And I'm very happy to have Dino back with me. And let's see. We already have Brandon in the chat. Hello. Coming up with that Irish Gaelic.
I was going to say, lesson number 2.
Exactly.
Oh, good grief. I haven't seen this yet.
Brandon is very excited to see you, Dino.
Hi! It's good to see you back, too. I was wondering if actually, it's really a funny thing. I went to the bathroom right before we started, and I was wondering if you would be able to make it. I was thinking about you as well, apparently.
Aww. Hello, Brandon. Hope you're doing well. Alrighty, I want to cover like 2 things before we get started, and that is that if you haven't seen the cover reveal for book 2, it's up. And it's coming out January 22nd, so a week from tomorrow. And right after this, we're going into my Discord and we're going to do an exclusive pre-release reading of the first 2 chapters. So if you're not a part of the Discord group, then consider it. I believe I have the link to the group down in the description. So we're going to be hanging out there and reading the first 2 chapters. So, yep. I have the book right here, but you need to go watch the cover review if you haven't seen it already. So, I'm not going to do it here. Alrighty, and with that, shall we begin?
Shall we? Sure. So, chapter 11. Unless you're desirous of going first. Chapter 11. The broken pieces of the vial sealed back together, reforming into a united vessel. The pink clouds sucked back into the vial, transforming the water into a clear blue once more. The bottle floated back to the top, touching the lily and sinking back into its embrace. The petals of the flower then spun back around into the air above, and the lily pad turning into a fresh shade of green again, the black slipping away from the roots' grasp. For a moment, all felt still. The waters flashed a violent red, and then it turned blue, calm again. The water began to swirl, an invisible force stirring it up into a whirlpool. Victor was helpless but to yield to its current. The water turned an eerie shade of crimson once more, as if the sun itself was red and shining into the depths of the pool. Victor spun around and around, a dizzying whirlpool, yet he felt nothing but peace. He felt himself pulled upwards by the shoulders, a strong force bringing him forth. It drew him up from the water like one would draw a bucket from a well. The water whizzed around him, his head breaking through into the air. The pressure change made his head spin, so he clenched his eyes shut. He felt as though he had not been in a shallow pool in the castle, but in an ocean of magic instead. His feet met the steadiness of ground, and he stood still, trying to get rid of the dizziness. A bird's song began trilling off in the distance, making Victor's eyes fly open. He stood in a field of stargazer lilies of 1,000 colors, very different from the water lilies in the pool. A shadow crossed in his line of sight, making him look up. Herr Carlius stood over him. "What was that?" Victor asked, his breathless voice just above a whisper. "Revelation," Carlius imparted, their pristine white cloak rather blinding in the field of color. "Of what?" "My child, what do you think?" A knot found itself wedged in Victor's throat. Ugh, the future? And who do you think they were? Those that were in this vision of the future. Heraclius sat down next to Victor amidst the lilies. People that need me? Need my help. Need to find freedom from self-hatred. As you said prior to the revelation. Muttered the Hera, but they said nothing beyond that. The birds that sang crooned alone in the air, their sweet whistling echoing through the fields. Leuven is sure lovely this time of year, is it not? That is, outside of the city limits. Victor jerked his head to face Carlius. We're in Leuven? But how? Never mind. I doubt that you will tell me. Carlius laughed beside him, but said nothing. Home of the Ancient Ones. And here we are, out in the open, in some field. Not any field, dear Victor. Look behind you. Victor could tell Carlius smiled beneath their cloak. He could hear it in their voice. Twisting to look behind him, Victor gasped. He lost his balance, toppling down the small hill they stood perched on. He landed among the lilies, squashing 2 plants underneath him. He fumbled up again, turning to face Heraclius, the picture now even more ironic than with the Hera in it. Behind the Hera of Argenta stood the city walls of Leuven. Great walls of gray stone loomed tall, wooden spikes jutting out like a crown upon its head. The city held perfect symmetry, but it was not welcoming in the least. Everything centered around the Temple of the Ancient Ones, which Victor could see rising in the sky from where he stood. A well-worn path, not far from where they stood, led up to the city gates. We are right by the main road! If anyone were to reverse it, we would be seen at once! Heraclius gave a sigh, which sounded like a breath of wind through the trees. I transported us here for a purpose, my friend. When will you trust me? The lilies swayed in a gentle breeze, and the birds' singing continued, not sympathizing with Victor's woes. A butterfly went dancing past, her yellow and blue wings sparkling in the sunlight. If Victor had not stared right at the walls of the horrid city, he may have felt at peace. But with such a hideous edifice before him, how could he? It seemed rather ironic, the 2 sceneries coexisting. How could so much beauty and tranquility exist near such a bloody and dark place? It seemed impossible that they could coincide. Well, I think it is high time that you begin your journey, Seems to be about noon, lunchtime, the changing of the guards and all. Heraclius rose, blocking the view of Leuven behind them. Victor's ears perked up. I see. Well, that is one way to force my hand, I suppose. But I ought to thank you. The journey all the way across Armorelli, through the wild land surrounding Leuven, and then, of course, through Leuven itself. A terrible journey it would have been. Not to mention dangerous, especially for Chef Bordeaux. I am glad I do not have to put my friend in more danger than necessary. The wildlands are crawling with ancient ones, after all. Not to mention Leuven itself. Well, with that being said, I thank you. I shall be off to find the horrid staff of Broncomers. May I not bump into him, though, for mercy. That would be terrible indeed. When Victor finished his speech, he looked up to find Heraclius gone. He gave a sigh as he began climbing down the hill he tumbled down. Typical Argentians, especially Carlius and Weira and Friedrich, always coming and going, never knowing when or how they were, where they will go. Like the wind, invisible. Ha! Can only feel or sense them when they want you to, when they are near. Like the wind, indeed. As Victor approached the massive black doors, the place was eerily silent. The closer he got to the dark palace, the songs of the birds grew more distant until he could hear them no longer. The wind died down as he approached, the air dead with stagnancy. The sharp rocks attacked him as he stepped on them, poking through his shoes, trying to slice his feet. The hot sun raged on above him, baking the path as he tread on it. Not a thing was to be heard besides Victor's own footsteps as he arrived. The wall loomed 3 stories high, but, although Victor looked this way and that, no guards could be seen. Where were the men that ought to be watching on the top of them? What of the ones that should be manning the doors? He dared not call out in case someone were to actually hear and answer him. But what could he do? A tiny creak of a door whispered, even quiet amongst the utter silence that surrounded him. It belonged to a small door that blended into the rest of the solid gate. Without that quiet creak, Victor would not have seen. But it had chosen to reveal itself by opening on its own accord. The door was designed for individuals entering, not major shipments or armies. It was only as wide as a broad-shouldered man, and not very tall. Bordeaux would have had to bend down to pass under it, if he could make it through at all with his massive shoulders. Victor opened it only a tad to see through to the other side, spying a deserted courtyard. He stepped through and closed the door behind him, noticing a knob on this side as he did so. He could exit this way as well if all went according to plan, the almost non-existent one, that is. Walking through Leven again was an eerie experience. The emptiness of the city worsened it. Goosebumps rose on Victor's arms, unbeckoned. Though there was no one in sight, Victor still chose to speed down the alleyways and lesser-traveled paths. His body was on edge, ready for some guard or warrior, ancient one, to jump him from their hiding place and pummel him. After all, Victor had seen the horrid acts of the ancient ones, who claimed to be about creating peace and harmony. He had witnessed their secret sect, the assassins no one knew about, not even most of the ancient ones themselves. It seemed quite like that sect to make a city deserted for Victor to walk right into their drawn swords. Yet minutes ticked by with no sudden event, and then he heard it. Laughter, and lots of it. He recognized the sort of laughing at once, from many years back, as a child wandering down the streets. Drunken laughter. Music rang out, tavern songs echoing along the empty streets. Then it was clear. On a wall, some streets down, Victor spied a poster advertising Drogs Day, a special holiday celebrating the anniversary of Brewcomer Drogs becoming a chosen one. The ancient ones were picky about the holidays they permitted. Furthermore, they deemed that only rituals and speeches by ancient ones were appropriate celebratory activities. On some occasions, workers would get paid bonus wages on special holidays. But this one, it was the only one that was a true celebration, at least in the eyes of the working class. They expressed their gratefulness by drinking. And this one day a year, the ancient ones did not mind. Everyone piled into the pub, gorging themselves in drunken merriment. Looking back the way he had come, Victor saw the guards had returned to their posts on the walls. Heraclius was right. They were in the middle of changing of the guards when he entered. Their stumbling gait made it clear that they were drunk. Perhaps because of this, they were extreme in their slowness in resuming their post. Tolmes shook his head and smiled. Carlius sure did know what they were doing. Avoiding the pub as much as possible, Victor went the long way around. He finally entered the courtyard of the Temple of the Ancient Ones. Victor laughed. His timing was perfect. In the heart of the courtyard, they had set up a ritual, laid out on the landing of the staircase leading up to the temple. This is the time in between everything. They already set it up, but it is not time yet, so they are off drinking. How could I have been so fortunate? Of course, it is not by random luck that this is so. As he stepped into the regal edifice dedicated to Melegius, the halls of the temple echoed with the sound of Victor's quickened footsteps. The walls narrowed in on him, making his lungs tighten with anxiety. This place felt alive to Victor, a looming beast just as bloodthirsty as he remembered, vibrating with evil. It buzzed with 1,000 small voices, mocking him and raising their complaints against Victor. Panic sounded behind his ears, making it difficult to think. Old memories buried from long ago resurfaced. Walking these very halls, running down them even, talking with friends, with loved ones, with him, feeling hopeful about the future. And then, feeling utterly devastated by the truth that came to be. Victor paused a moment to catch his breath, though he had not even walked that far inside. This perfect moment between guards would not last. If he wanted to get in and out successfully, he had to be quicker than this. Breaking out into a sprint, Victor ran on his tiptoes, just like he learned many years ago, in order to reduce the sound of his footsteps. The temple spit memories at him around every corner, causing Victor to process them in his mind before discarding them. He had to keep his mind sharp on the object of his mission. I must find out whatever Bruckhammer is planning and put an end to it. Now! Victor ran into the sound of voices like a brick wall, causing him to stop in his tracks. His face flamed with heat, but his skin prickled with the sickly chill of anxious sweat. Lulling the people is of the utmost priority here, my friends. A man's voice spoke with confidence from a room nearby. Victor approached the somewhat familiar voice with caution. We must not let them panic, at least not about what they should really be panicking about. We know if they discovered the truth, fear would rage among them, but we cannot let this happen. The truth must not be found out. A large double door led into a great chamber hall, just as Victor remembered. Only one of the doors stood closed, allowing Victor to eavesdrop. The voice he heard belonged to the head of the Bandara sect of the Ancient Ones. Clothed in robes of white, so pristine it hurt Victor's eyes. And tell me, for her, how do you suggest we deter this panic? Victor could see the man that spoke in response to this, a tall, lanky man in green robes. Easy! We give them something else to panic about. Ah, and do you have an idea as to what we can give them to focus their fear on this time? Of course, it is simple. Lord Bruckhammer has had his staff prepared and ready for such an occasion as this. It has been some time since we used our old standby as a diversion, has it not? Heinefeld Castle has been dormant for far too long. The people's fears of the good old dark castle have simmered down to a distant thought. We must stir a new heat in that particular fire, I should think. Lord Bruckhammer had the wonderful idea of connecting the two, the staff and the castle. The concept is, we use the staff on nearby villages and make the focal point the dark castle. Set off some magical bombs, release a few of our contained monsters near the castle. That should do the trick nicely, yes? Yes, I believe we see. But you forget we know little about this staff of Lord Bruckhammer's. What does it do? Victor could hear the tremor of pride in Faher's voice, even from his hiding place. Ah, I forget that not everyone has been taken into our Lord Bruckhammer's glorious confidence. He says both the idea and the power of the staff come from the highly praised Melegius himself. I shall not bore you with the details, but all you need to know is that it will do the trick of enticing the panic quite nicely. Are you suggesting it helps you control fear? I suppose that is a nice way of putting it, yes. People are accustomed with anxiety left and right. They approach their local priests and priestesses, constantly trying to cure themselves of it. But they are such little creatures, are they not? If you are not in the know about what is truly going on and are powerful like we are, then how can we expect them not to be fearful? They are weak and they know it. They are prey and act like it. We should not try to act to cure them of what they are, at least not when it is of some use to us. We can manipulate them in this way. If we want them to be complacent, then we will make them feel informed and in control. Perhaps protected. Perhaps if we want them to panic, whether it is for misdirection or for another reason, we give them something to fear. Honestly, it is like dealing with children. They are, in some aspects, when you compare their minds to the like of ours. Fahir, now just wait a moment. There was another person joining in, another older man. His silver hair wisped to one side, his spectacles perched on his nose. His eyebrows furrowed so low they seemed to be struck in a disapproving expression. Are our jobs not supposed to be helping them get rid of their flaws? Is that not the whole point of our order? To achieve perfection? Of course, sir, of course, of course. I did not mean to imply that we stop that by any means, but we all know that fear is such a powerful flaw. I merely meant they must go through so much in order to fix it. Removing ignorance, learning to trust us, not to mention removing their other flaws and weaknesses that could make them feel unsafe in any array of situations. But even if they were to wholly trust us without the power of their own, they may feel unsafe depending on someone besides themselves. I was simply stating that, while we wait, and of course assist them in their cleansings, we use their fear to help. Protect them better and further Melgis's cause. Fear will be, most likely, the last flaw to go. My point is, we can use it in the meantime. We do this in hope and trust that they are able to perfect themselves eventually. We all know, after all our years of experience, there will be some who are unable, or worse yet, unwilling to cleanse themselves of their flaws. I understand this may seem somewhat contradictory to our main purpose of cleansing Chimeran of imperfections, but in the end it is actually helping it, just in the long term. Do you see? Does that make sense, honored brother? The old priest, who challenged Fahir, nodded his head and grunted affirmingly. Fahir moved to speak once more, but the grumpy-looking old man stopped him with an upheld finger. One more question. This staff seems awfully important. What is being done to protect it? The room fell silent before Fahir burst into laughter, others hesitatingly following his lead. Oh, my dear brother, who could ever sneak into our sacred temple without us noticing? Furthermore, who could do so without alerting to the speaking chosen one? Who could worm their way into our vaults and capture it, not to mention escape with it, all under our very noses? Who would even dare to try? No, my friend, it is safe here with us. There is no need for alarm. All who would oppose us hide. They are Fingalbaddies. They are cowards. We have no need to fear them. Well, I would not call it fear, but caution. Safety first, since the staff is so vital. Oh, brother, but you only think of the olden days when the slimy Victor Tomes mucked about, stirring up trouble for us constantly. But these are not those days. That vile worm has not been seen or heard from in some time. He mopes about in the walls of his castle, scared and trembling, and Lord Brookhammer lets him. Who is there to oppose us? There are none. But I thought we had not decimated Heineful Castle only because last time Lord Brookhammer tried to go in, he... Fahir cut off the old man with a sharp hiss. Lord Brookhammer allows Victor Tomes to exist. Make no mistake, there is nothing in this world that happens or does not happen that Lord Brookhammer Drogs does not wish to. If there could ever be a true threat to him, which I doubt, he would extinguish it at once. No question. Fahir took in a deep breath, a smile settling on his lips once more. Now that this inconsequential matter is settled, shall we arrange dates and times for this mission with the staff to be carried out? Victor grinned. He had heard enough. There would be no need for the dates and the times of their little plan if you cut the heart of it out. Take this staff of theirs, kill the plan. Easy, and made all the easier by their arrogance. Not guarding a most important weapon, because who would dare step foot near the city, not to mention the temple? Well, if only they knew that one had already dared, and stood out in the hallway, gleaning from their conversation. Perhaps Fire's mother never told him that pride comes before a fall. Thank you.
Well done. It's funny because I remember writing like certain lines of that.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where I was and stuff, and it's just funny how far we've come since then.
Yeah. A long time. Especially if you started writing the second one in 2017. This has to have been before that.
No.
Or did you start writing it after?
I started writing it after, and that's why it took me so long to publish this, because I had written it, the second one, thinking it would be the first, and realizing I needed Victor's backstory, I guess.
Huh.
So, yep.
Well, now we've got it. And we know a little more. Thank you. I'm so glad. As long as you can understand everything I said at the end of the day, we're golden.
I think so. I think you did a great job. So,
good.
Are you ready to go into?
Am I ready? Ooh. 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 Okay, chapter 12. Deep down in the depths of. I'm just kidding. But we are deep down in the depths of the Ancient One's temple. So, chapter 12. Victor had never ventured down into the vaults when he spent time in this temple. He had no need to do so then, but he did now. The air in the underground vaults held a cool moisture, a musty chill that only encouraged the cold sweat that had broken out on Victor's skin the moment he entered the temple. As he descended the steps, Victor wondered if he would be able to figure out if he got the correct staff or not. After all, it would be completely plausible for the Ancient Ones to have multiple staffs of powerful and magical origin. He supposed he had gotten this far. He would just have to trust his instincts and Heraclius to get him the rest of the way. White chandeliers lined the ceilings of the hall, every surface made of bleached white stone. Perhaps they were trying to make the space look cheerful, but to Victor it felt like a cold, sterilized facility designed to lull you into a feeling of safety. He might feel tempted to appreciate the psychological games the decor presented, if it were not for the dire threat that it posed. Gold display cases lined the walls of the hall, each filled with countless objects, each more dangerous looking than the next. The presence of the filthy black magic hung in the room like a poisonous frog, making Victor's eyes twitch. As he passed display case after display case, he thought of the cost that each and every one of these objects took to make. The kind of magic that the Ancient Ones excelled at could only be created by violence and innocent bloodshed. The closer and fonder you felt towards your victim, the more powerful the magic became. Oh my gosh, can I just stop and say, how awful is that? Who had the Ancient Ones killed to achieve a collection like this? Their mothers? Their fathers? Their children? Victor could not imagine the number of lives ripped from the world, all for the sake of power. Shock and horror grabbed Victor by the throat as he reached the end of the hallway. Before him stood 3 more hallways, just like the last. He turned the corner away from the new hallways to find a massive storage room filled with shelving units, 10 shelves high, each filled to the brim with black magic objects, some bigger than those in the display cases in the previous hallways. The items in the display cases somehow suddenly seemed silly, perhaps even inconsequential in comparison to these. What had the Ancient Ones been doing while he whimpered in his castle? What horrors had they committed while he celebrated his sorrows with his own special pity party? They had forged one monstrosity after another. But all Victor wanted to do was think of himself, wishing to be happy and normal. What good are those things when there is such terrible evil in the world? No, now stood the time to be brave and strange. After all, if you are normal, you have to keep being normal, no matter the cost. As Victor perused the collection of murder objects in the musty storage chamber, he heard a door slam from somewhere off in the back of the room. Footsteps marched with a determined gait, causing Victor to search for cover. He dove behind the end of one shelf and prayed the figure had not already spotted him. A swishing of a cloak sounded almost as loud as the person's heavy footsteps as they passed the aisle Victor hid on the other side of. Holmes's lungs constricted as he waited with bated breath. The figure had almost reached the door exiting the chamber when they stopped, their shoes giving a small squeak as they turned back around. Sarhad, are you coming? You do understand how urgent this is, do you not? The voice sent chills breaking out all over Victor's body. He had not heard it in some years, and time had caused the voice to deepen with an edge of bitterness. Lighter footsteps sprinted from the direction of the door that had slammed earlier. Of course the Lord Bercomer just wanted to ensure the vault is locked and secure, just in case. We do not know what Holmes is here for, after all. Victor could barely hear the speaking chosen one's hiss over his thundering heart. I have a feeling I know what he is here for, and it is not in that vault. Melodius said that he sensed Carlius's presence before Holmes fully emerged into the city, meaning they are partnered. Knowing Carlius, however, it is more likely that he is Holmes's master. Lord Melodius agreed with my assessment. With that information, I can deduce he is after an item that would be valuable to the Argentians. The child's destined sword. If he gets his hands on it and is able to pass it on to Carlius, the child will get it. And that is the last thing we will want. If we fail in preventing this from occurring, Melodius will rain fire with his fury. Ah, I see. Of course, that would be terrible. You do not think there is a chance he could be after something in the vault, though. I had thought of staying here and guarding it, just in case. No, absolutely not. Melgius and I are both sure he is after the sword, no doubt. But the staff, there is no chance he found out your immediate plan? The plan is new. Besides, Carlius is a strategist. That devil plays in the long game. Getting the staff would seem unimportant when you can get the sword instead. And furthermore, I need you, Zarhad, so you cannot stay here. I plan on getting my full revenge on Holmes, that silly boy, once and for all. And to do that, I need a bit of magic. Who else is better qualified to help me fiddle with minds than you? There are none other with your giftedness. It is a pleasure, my lord. The two walked from the room, their footsteps growing fainter as they traveled farther away. But Victor could not get his mind to think right. His blood rushed through his skull like a stampede, making him feel dizzy. What should he do now? He had not known about any magical sword. No one ever spoke to him about this destined child, or whatever that could mean. Surely, if it had high importance, Heraclius would have mentioned it. But the Hera of Agenta had not said as much at all about the purpose of this mission. Victor had followed the only loose thread he could grasp onto about the staff, but now he had two opportunities to choose from: a sword or a staff. Both clearly held some level of importance, but which demanded more of a priority? Were either of them even his intended target? Victor did not know what to think. But he did know that Bruckheimer's words had shaken him to his core. Up until now, Victor had always hoped, in some sense or another, that Melegius Reptins was nothing but a fallacious myth. The so-called god stood distant, intangible, and his legend felt intimidating. Such a story could be a powerful tool, everything the order needed to strike fear in the hearts of the people so they could control them and make them submissive. But to hear it from Bruckheimer's own lips in a private conversation with his most trusted advisor, for him to say that he personally spoke with Melegius, it seemed unreal. But both Bruckheimer and Zarhad referred to the speaking chosen one having a conversation with Melegius as entirely normal. If Victor thought logically, it made sense, seeing as he did hold the title of speaking chosen one, which by definition meant that he speaks for Melegius. But Victor had always hoped it was a ruse, just like so much else that the order perpetuated. Alarm bells rang through the temple, causing Victor's fear to climb into a frenzy once more. Stars danced upon his eyelids as he struggled to fill his lungs with air. Light footsteps flew into the chamber, pausing to dart in and out of the aisles. Had they discovered that Victor crouched in hiding here? When the footsteps were only 3 shelves away from him, they stopped. The person's gasping breaths could be heard even from where Victor cowered in trembling. Victor bent his knees further, spying through the shelves to see who had joined him in hiding. No robes cloaked the body of the panting person, so not an ancient one. And even if Zarhad or Bruckheimer chose not to wear their uniforms today, it could not be them. Victor would recognize them. He crouched even lower, trying to get a peek at their face. "Mrs. Vertiski?" Victor exclaimed, losing his balance and falling into a sitting position. She squeaked in surprise before spying through the shelves to see him. "Well, I can hardly believe it. It is Victor Tomes." "What are you doing here? You could get yourself, and not to mention your unborn babe, killed." "I am aware, Tomes. I do not need you patronizing me. I am here because of that letter I received. I had to get some answers." "Answers? What kind of answers?" "I wanted to know about my husband. He has been missing for some time. He often went on trips for the merchant he worked for, see? But the months have gone by since he returned to me. I implored my friends in Argenta to help, but the letter says almost nothing about him. It just spoke of the future, my babe's future, nothing of him. But he is my husband, Victor. You must understand. I cannot just forget about him." "I do understand, Mrs. Vertiski, I do. But why here? Why do you think your husband, or clues to his whereabouts, are to be found here?" I do not know. I just have a feeling he is here, imprisoned. Who knows what they are doing to him? Horrible, horrible beasts that they are. I know my husband, and I know how he felt about this place. He is for Argenta, through and through. I know it." Victor rounded the shelves, removing the barriers between him and his friend. Furrowing his brows, he cocked his head at her. "Mrs. Vertiski, what is the matter? You said that last bit strangely." She sucked in a deep breath, her eyes looking far off as she made her reply. Forgive me, my friend, for I have not been wholly honest, but I feel the truth matters little. Mrs. Vertiski? What do you mean by that? Honesty always matters, if not for others, then for ourselves. Tears shimmered in her eyes like falling stars. I know it matters, Victor. It does not feel like it. Victor stood silent for a moment and then pursed his lips together. I am here to retrieve some item. Something powerful, but I am not sure what. Herr Carlius sent me, but did not say what I am supposed to retrieve. I assumed it to be an item, but the Hera never said what it was. Perhaps that is it. Perhaps it is not the staff or the sword, but a man. Shall we go down and check the prison? I suppose I will not be able to convince you to leave, since this is your husband we are talking about. Yes, that must be it. It is your husband I have been sent to save. It all makes sense. Victor lurched forward, moving to hurry off to a prison break. Mrs. Vertiski caught his arm, stopping him. Oh, dear Victor, how sweet you are. I wish it could be so that it could be that easy, but it is not to be. I know my husband is not down there. But tell me of your situation, that I might be of some help. Tell me about this staff, this sword, that I might do something good. I feel so easily separated from Argenta due to my physical distance from it. I will do anything to feel like one of them. This will help me with that endeavor. I do not understand. You said, do not mind what a hormonal pregnant woman says, Victor. She is confused, questioning, and her emotions are all over the place. Now I am ripe for adventure. And no, there is no talking me out of it. Tell me, Victor, of these weapons you are deciding between, that I may be of some service. Very well. We shall be hurrying. They could come upon us at any minute. There is a staff I just heard a council of ancient ones speaking of. Contains terrible dark magic that causes fear. They plan to use it to stir up a panic in the villagers around my castle and make them terrified of Heineful, so that they are focused on that instead of something else that the ancient ones are doing. On the other hand, I just heard Bruckhammer You do not mean the Bruckhammer Drogs, as in the speaking chosen one. He is here? Now? Yes, he is here. Hence the danger. We must hurry. As I was saying, he spoke of some magical sword that is prophesied or destined or something of that sort for some child. He knew that I was here and said that Melgeus himself told him so. Drogs felt assured that I would be going after the sword and nothing else. So, with no specific direction from Heraclius on what I am supposed to be doing, beyond go in there and get something, you will be fine. I have no idea what I am doing here. Is it the sword? Is it the staff? Is it something else entirely? I see. I feel that it is rather obvious, if you ask me. Mrs. Vertiski muttered softly, her voice distant with thought. Oh, how so? The woman stared off into the distance, her mind drifting far away from the present. Mrs. Vertiski? Are you all right? You seem off. Mrs. Vertiski! The brunette started. Forgive me, Sir Thomas. I am afraid this is all a bit much for me. Well, never mind that. Yes. The sword and the staff. As I said, it seems rather obvious. If you go after the sword, you will come face to face with Bruckhammer Drogs, and unless that is what you want, of course. I have thought quite a lot about what our visitor from Argenta told us about the caretaker of Heineful Castle. If I remember correctly, he said you were quite the hunter of the ancient ones, and the chosen ones alike. Took out the only chosen ones besides Drogs himself, and always stirred up trouble for Bruckhammer. But unless that is your goal, it seems to me that the staff is the obvious answer. It is more of an immediate need. If you ask me, some sword destined for some child does not seem to be your responsibility, since you have been tasked with helping the people of Hymerin all you can, and the staff seems both directly related to that and to your castle. I would say that that is your responsibility. But that is just my humble opinion. Victor gave a chuckle of relief. Ha! I am glad that you say that, because I do not know where the sword is, but probably far away and heavily guarded. But the staff, it is right here, through those doors, totally unguarded. And while I did do my share of hunting years back, I usually had help, and I never came face to face with Brookhammer himself. I suppose I never quite felt brave enough for that. So, to the staff, shall we? Yes, I see. I think we shall. The two crept out from the shelves and into the open space of the chamber, heading towards the doors of the innermost vault. Shining robes of many colors decorated the walls above and next to the doors. Are those Ancient One robes? I have only ever seen white and brown. What are all these other colors? Mrs. Vertiski whispered as they crept along. The order's hierarchy is symbolized by the color of their robes. Each sect has its own color. Brown is for the Zakanic sect, the lowest level of Ancient Ones. They are practically just servants, nothing more, but you probably know this already. But what you may not know is that every Ancient One has to start out in the Zakanic sect and are moved up as they go. But of course, some never leave. The Bendarenda set wear pristine white robes. They concern themselves with the dealings of common folk, and that is why you know of them. Examples of this would be public announcements, worship to Melegius, holiday rituals, laws, taxes, and more. Most notably, they decide what sect the new recruits enter after a time of training in the Zakanic sect. The Fortrillan sect wear green robes. I am sure they are in charge of this very room, as they deal with all things magical, whether it be creatures, artifacts, or anything else. They often call themselves the pursuers of Argenta, because they hate the false magic of that land. The Alhenin sect, in their golden robes, are scholars, teachers, and government leaders. More of a recluse group, so are not as well known. But there is a robe up here that is missing. You did not hear it from me, or well, I suppose you can say that you did. What do I care? But there is a secret sect of most Ancient Ones do not even know about. High level, that one. They wear robes of crimson. Crimson? But I thought wearing that color was forbidden. Blasphemous. It is the color of Melegius himself. It is for most, but not for this group. I do not even know the name of them. In truth, I do not know much about them at all, and certainly not nearly as much as I would like. But they are different. They are allowed to wear this color as they are deemed the hand of Melegius, or something to that effect. They reached the door to the vault, and Victor tried it, grunting. Locked. Let me at it, Mrs. Vertiski said, pushing him out of the way and pulling a small device from her pocket. One thing my good-for-nothing husband left me with. Taught me how to use it in case I ever got caught for Argenta's cause. She scoffed, working hard on the door's lock. This is how I got into the temple in the first place. Picked a side door open. Now tell me, what does this secret sect do? You have garnered my curiosity, and I must know. Victor sighed as he sat on the ground watching her work. Do not think I will let you out of explaining that remark, Vertiski. Well, like I said, I do not know much. What I do know is that they excel in the darkest of magic and are unafraid of violence. They can blend in with the shadows and disappear in seconds. Mrs. Vertiski remarked as she turned the lock, grimacing as it did not release. Assassins, perhaps? I have thought the same for years. Probably so, but I have a feeling their duties do not stop there. I believe they have their hands in more than I care to think about. It is frightening, truly, knowing only a small portion of what they are capable of. And that small bit being so unnerving only makes it worse. The lock turned and released, the door opening with a soft click. Mrs. Vertiski inhaled and smiled. Sorry it took so long. I suppose I am a bit rusty at this. I have not practiced in a while. I guess I will learn from this experience and keep up my skills. No problemo. I understand. You hope you will never use such skills, and you never do. That is, until your life depends upon it. Exactly. Or others' lives. Let us cease our friendly chatter and get this staff. You are certain it is unprotected? Oh no. I said unguarded, but I have no doubt that it is protected in some capacity. Well, then let us see what horrors Brookhummer has contrived for us to face,
Nicely done yet again, Dino.
Thank you.
Yes, the horrors of the dark magic of the ancient ones.
Terrible stuff.
Terrible indeed.
Terrible, 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 terrible. I mean, here they have hallways of it, and shelves of it, and rooms of the shelves, and we find out that all of it comes from killing innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
Good grief.
Indeed.
I don't like it. I don't know. How are people even so? How do you get to be so cruel?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, oh boy.
I mean, I guess you'll just have to wait and see, right? It's only book one.
I know. Oy, oy, oy. There's more to learn about the ancient ones, I assume.
Oh, there's more about everything to learn about. So.
Even well, more about Victor Tomes, more about Heraclius, Magenta, and Mirren.
Mm-hmm.
Do we see Mrs. Vertiski again?
We did see her again, yeah.
So,
Or was that a question or a statement?
that was more a question.
Oh, do we? Maybe, maybe not. I
Okay.
can't. I will share.
You can't tell me?
Mm-mm.
Great. Great. More to think about.
It is not the last chapter, Brandon. There is
20.
uh, technically 19 chapters, but the ending is just the short letter from Professor Roden. So,
Um, oh yeah, 19 is the letter from Roland.
yeah.
Well,
Are we gonna do the final chapter? I mean, not the final, but the
but
final.
the final for today.
Yeah.
Time to figure out if they get out of there alive.
Yes.
What happened? What about the staff?
Guess we'll have to see in chapter 13.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Chapter 13. The vault held two separate rooms, both quite large and richly decorated with lavish embellishments. Unlike the magical objects in the chamber and the hallways outside, the items in here held not a speck of dust on them. Everything had its place and lay arranged just so, clearly on display. Someone is quite particular. My goodness, this is quite the collection, Mrs. Vertiski exclaimed with a chuckle, bending down to examine an ornate dagger. Yes, well, Rocummer and Zarhad have to be in their job. These are powerful objects. Each must be cared for if they are not to explode or something. I do not fancy discovering the ins and outs of their collection. Do you? Mrs. Vertiski stiffened in her spot. This is their vaults? I thought this was just another storage room of the ancient ones. An extra special one or something. Oh, no. They came out of here. That is when I heard them talking about the sword. The ancient ones can be meticulous, but this is clearly something beyond their capacity. Only Brocummer would be like this. And Zarhad, being his advisor and closest companion, has to be likewise. I see. They walked through the first room in silence, but found no trace of the staff. As they began to walk into the second one, Mrs. Vertiski settled in next to Victor, matching his stride. So, you seem to know an awful lot about this place. What is the story with you? Is it from all those years of ancient one hunting? You sneak around this place all the time or something? How do you know so much about the ins and outs of the order? Victor narrowed his eyes at her. I will tell you my story if you explain all your emotional strangeness back in the chamber and what you are hiding about your husband. Mrs. Vertiski's eyes widened, and then she gave a single nod of her head. Very well, we can be friends with our secrets. I doubt that will be problematic. I cannot tell if your words were laced with sarcasm or not. Victor chuckled as he lifted an eyebrow in question. Try drenched. I do think it would be best if we keep such things to ourselves, in all honesty. Perhaps it will be just for a season, and we will confess what we hold so close to our chest at a future time. Or perhaps we will part ways after this and never see one another again. In either case, it will not harm us to be ignorant of each other's history. But if we do tell, it could potentially cause trouble. You must see my logic, I am sure. I do. I can also see where neither of us feel like vomiting our emotional troubles at this present moment. Perhaps I am being overdramatic with my description, though. I should probably just stick with your fine word of confess. True, although I quite like the first. To share one's deepest feelings to someone that is much of a stranger as they are a friend would feel like a bitter and sickening emptying of one's self. Look at us. We sound like quite the philosophers, do we not? Ha! They shared a laugh with one another, taken away to another place in their minds, a place courted by friendship and peace. But as they turned to face the second room, bigger than the first, and all the more suffocated with perfection, the moment faded. The happy place drifting away like a leaf on the wind, replaced in reality once more. In the center of the room, glowing brighter than any of the candles on the chandeliers that lit the space, stood a staff, made of blackened wood, tall antlers that rose from the top, each point sharpened into points. A large T-jewel lay embedded in the wood, just under where the antlers began. This is what radiated the light, combined with 3 smaller rubies just underneath it. A leather string hung from one of the antlers, holding a feather and a skull. Is that a human skull? Victor exclaimed, taking a step back from it. No, I do not think it is. It is too small for a human skull, is it not? I doubt. Mrs. Vertiski stopped when she saw the sad look Victor gave her. No, no, no. They could not be so evil. She sucked in a sharp breath when Tom's nodded. No! A child's skull! How vile! How wicked! How... Ah! I cannot fathom anyone being capable of such atrocities. Her words became muffled by Victor's arms wrapping around her, pulling her into his chest. Sobs cut the rest of her words off entirely. I know it is hard to believe, but every single magical object is the result of death and bloodshed. That is how their magic works, Vertiski. Someone has to be sacrificed for it to contain dark magic. That is why it is so opposite to Argenta's magic, which is the result of life. Death begets more death, life creates more life, and each does so in abundance. There was a time, or so I have been told by Argentians, before Melgius, before the war, before all of this. A time where death was nothing more than a doorway into more life. But they have twisted it, violated it, mutilated it, until it is the stuff of horrors. You cannot die in Dead Man's Graveyard. Every single day of your life feels like death, and there is no life after death, only more death and darkness. In their quest for perfection, they lose all sense of life. They think immortality is life, but it is just a never-ending cycle of death. But there is hope in Argenta, and we must cling to it. We must return death to its proper place once more, as a gateway into more life. Even if it is only in our minds for the time being, Mrs. Vertiski, we must return death to her original state, as a being of light. Mrs. Vertiski pulled back, wiping at her reddened eyes. Well, now you are a philosopher and a poet. You are quite multifaceted, you are. They shared a soft chuckle together. Thank you, Mr. Tomes. I think I know exactly what you mean. It is better to live a short life well lived than have immortality but never truly live. That is the true death. Now, this staff, what are we to do about it? It seems so ripe for the taking. But as you have said, it cannot be that simple. They must have protected it. Agreed. But there is only one way to find out. Victor reached out, his hand shaking as he neared the staff. I hate touching such evil, he grunted as he drew closer. It is powerful. It feels like force is propelling me away from it, but all the same, I feel it calling to me. Fight it, Victor! I am. I can do this. He pushed through, grasping his hand around the staff and pulling it to his chest. With a shriek, he fell back, gasping for air. Suddenly, the room darkened, his mind being cast to another place and time. The water felt so cold, like ice biting into his bones. He could not get air into his lungs. A wolf howled in the distance, hungry for his blood. A face he had not seen in some time appeared above, calling him out. It is okay, Victor. George. The closest thing he had ever really had to a father. He had yanked him out of a river, but when he blinked, they suddenly stood in the town square, right outside the very temple where he now lay, paralyzed by his vision. But he did not think of the present, for his mind lingered in a time when George still lived, and Victor was just a boy. For a moment, Victor felt peace, but then he followed George's line of sight. A man hung limp from the rope that snaked around his neck. The citizens of Leven jeered at the corpse, calling him a Fingalvalley and announcing that justice had been served. Panic grabbed Victor by the throat and shook him. He hung, dead. Victor, look at me. George grasped his arm, forcibly turning Victor towards him. We have to get out of here. Now. But Victor began to object, but George cut him off. I am so sorry, my boy, but there is no saving harm. He is dead. They have killed him. George's dark skin looked much lighter than normal, as if he might be sick. I cannot believe it either, Vic. He was like my son, just like you are. But your brother is not coming back. Do you understand me? And they will kill us if they find us. They can never find us. Do you understand that? They can never find us. I do not know how, but we have to get back to my castle. We have to get back to Heineful and barricade ourselves in, or get to Urgenta, or something. Anything but here. Listen to me, Vic. I was one of them, a general in the war. They are ruthless in pursuit of their perceived opposition. They are patient. They will track us down and take us out no matter how long it takes. We have to go now. I am sorry, terribly sorry. And I know what you have lost, but we cannot linger. We cannot linger. We cannot linger. The ghost in his mind repeated the same phrase as it echoed out, fading to gray. Victor could not help but feel like a child again, helpless in a world that was spiraling out of control so fast that he could feel anything but numbness. His life in a matter of a year had lost itself to an insanity so evil it stole his faith in humanity and never returned it. Another vision of the world formed around him. This time it was of Heineful Castle, back in its original state. He could hear Brookhamers shouting from outside, calling his name. Victor saw the pink vial in his hands, felt the pain as he fell, his skin prickling with panic as the bottle broke into a million pieces. Sharp pain brought him back to his senses. Victor, come on, wake up! Holmes, wake up! Victor groaned as he sat up, his knuckles white around the staff. Oh, did you just slap me? Yes. Yes, I did. I had to get revenge for your escapade at my house. At least I did not slap a pregnant woman. Victor chuckled as he rubbed his eyes. Yes, yes, keep rubbing that fact in my face. But may I say, while I might not be pregnant, I was unconscious. So I may have hit a pregnant lady, but at least she was awake and fighting me. Hardy, har, har. Now, what in the world just happened? Victor sighed, standing up slowly. It transported me in a vision to two separate times. I confess I was extremely afraid. His throat closed in on itself as he saw a figure standing behind Mrs. Vertiski, holding a ritual knife in the air above her. No! Leave her alone! Vercomer grinned as he began to pull the weapon down towards her. Mrs. Vertiski spun around, the knife plunging into her chest as she did so. And that is the end of Mrs. Vertiski.
That's the end of the chapter, you mean.
And Mrs. Vertiski. She looks pretty dead to me.
So that's all we had planned to. That's all we had planned to read today. I forgot that was such a major cliffhanger.
I did too.
But we still have an half an hour. until we're supposed to be on the other in the Discord one.
When is that? Sorry.
At 3:30. I told
We
her.
heard it. Okay.
So if we want, I think with how fast you've been reading, I think we could fit the next one in. Yeah, next one is super long.
Kendall's not opening the book again.
Do you want me to read it?
I'll get it. My mom sent me a picture of, here it is. I have that it'll take 32 minutes to read it.
Oh.
I
don't think so with how it's a shorter one.
Is it?
And yeah.
Because it takes it directly from my reading speed. And it says it'll take 32 minutes.
Okay. I mean, we might just have to torture Brandon here.
We might.
Yeah, we'll be back next week to
find out if Mrs. Vertiski lives or dies. To be honest, like, you can't get more defined than the knife plunging into her chest as she did so. Unless it goes through a lung and they have great medical care in the middle of the woods, you know?
Oh, true.
Skips the heart. Or something, I don't know. I got nothing.
We'll just have to wait and see next week.
Yep. Come back next week, Brandon. He's like, what? No. What happened? Poor guy.
Sorry. But
she does.
She does.
I forgot about that. Dying and still has a baby. Time. What a time.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to end that here and come back next week for the last 3 chapters. And is the last 3 chapters, right?
No, that would be, if we read 3 more, it'd be 14, 15, 16. You'd still have to do 17, 18, and 19.
You're right. Okay. You're right. So the second to last episode of the reading of this book. So until then, guys, check out the links in the description. Like I said, I have my Discord one in there where we're about to go read the first 2 chapters of the second book. And links to Amazon, all that goodness. And until then, bye, guys.
Bye.